Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League show. I'm Dave Anthony, joined as always with Kevin Pauls. Coming up today, we are going to talk a little bit about the games this past week. We're going to look at the MJHL 3 stars. We're going to talk a little bit about the MGEU East and West divisions. We got some opinions on the playoffs and the format as well. We're also going to squeeze in a conversation with Selkirk Steelers head coach Hudson Friesen. Plus, we got a whole lot more. So that's all coming up here on episode 2 of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League show. So, Kevin Pauls, let's jump right into last week. And there are a number of games that were highlighted. And I want to start with one from the Friday night. Wayway Sikapo goes into Verdun, Steelers won 4-3. Wayway is an incredibly hardworking team. They're fast. Landon Cochran's got them working well. That's a big 2 points, even though they kind of floundered a little bit after. That's a big win for Wayway last week, though.
It's massive, and they're proving why they're going to be a contender in the Western MGEU conference. They're consistent. They're finding, spread out play throughout their lineup. And, Verdun's kind of been a hot and cold team, and they're going to probably find their legs too. Let's face it, they've got a lot of strong players on their squad as well. But the Wolverines have done a good job adjusting night to night and bringing that compete consistently, which, you have to in order to assert yourself in the top of the standings.
Yeah, another big part of it too is they went 3 for 6 on the power play, and they weren't heavily outshot, which has been an issue at times. But if teams are going to give you opportunities, you got to make the most of it. And we look at the power play numbers around the league. Teams that are up at the top, they're usually a good power play team, or at least a good penalty kill team, one of the special teams, and that's going to be big for Wayway going forward, and it's going to be big for a team like Swan Valley. Let's talk about their Saturday night comeback win against the Winnipeg Blues. Riley Fiquette scores with 30 seconds left in regulation and then 30 some odd seconds into overtime. That's a big win for a Stamps team that really needed a boost.
Massive. It goes such a long way towards, positivity and confidence throughout the locker room and showing that, that fight throughout the course of a 60-minute hockey game, not giving up and finding a way to grab 2 points. And like everybody says, 2 points on any given night are so important. And all of those factors contribute to that, whether it's special teams or just bearing down when you have to, because you see a lot of teams, quite frankly, take their foot off their gas at various points. It's going to be who picks up the mantle and runs with it.
Speaking of, the Winnipeg Blues have all of a sudden put a tiny little stretch together of collecting points, and they're right in that conversation. They're not, within shouting distance of that MGEU fourth playoff spot. They're just wanting to hang around here a little bit. And Winkler's got to be careful. We'll talk about them coming up in a sec. Another game I want to focus in on from the Sunday night was the Dauphin Kings, their big win against the Niverville Nighthawks. They trailed 1-0 at one point in that game. Havril Simchuk gets them even early in the second, then 4 unanswered goals after that for a 5-1 win. Really complete effort for a Kings team that maybe were the underdogs going in, but have proved they're still top dogs among the West.
On any given night, a team can bring their best. And, I'm not going to speak to the Niverville Nighthawks at this point, but, I think they get solid goaltending at key points in that game. They capitalize at key moments and they had that dog mentality. And the Nighthawks have been playing really good hockey too. And on the other side of the coin, I think this was maybe a teachable moment for them. They can't take days off. You can't start looking at the standings and getting, some undue confidence for something you haven't earned yet. And I think the Dauphin Kings came in with a business plan and they executed to perfection.
Absolutely. And again, like they are where they are for a reason. They have this level of expectations, this level of, kind of respect when the Dauphin Kings come to town. You pay attention and they don't want to be, an afterthought to the MGEU East, regardless of what points or record is right now. And they proved it. They came in on the road, picked up 2 big points in a building that's tough to win in. Speaking of buildings that are tough to win in, the Icon Arena has become a kind of a tough building for the Winkler Flyers to win in the last few weeks, and that includes a couple of losses to the Selkirk Steelers. The most recent one, a shorthanded goal to tie the game, and then a last-second goal by Jules Delapoule, fantastic defenseman who's gotten better every game, as we'll hear from Hudson Friesen coming up a little bit later on here in this episode. But the Steelers, Kevin, you saw them in person. They're for real. And Winkler, they need to up their game here a little bit.
They've been building slowly. They've added some key pieces throughout the course of the last few weeks. Graham Pickering has been huge for them, playing an integral role on the power play, and he really stands out on the ice. Kason Fisher would come to mind. We talked last time around in this show about someone like Nick Goodmanson and how important he is to that group. And, it comes down to points in the game, like we talked about similarly with the Dauphin Kings. You have to cash when you're given the opportunity. And if you give the Selkirk Steelers enough time to kind of stick with you, and then you create an opportunity at the end. For example, on Tuesday night's game, the Flyers didn't get the puck out of their own end. It lingered around long enough, and the Steelers managed to get pucks on net, and one found its way past Leif Ekblad for what ended up being a really a vibe killer for the Flyers, for lack of a better term, especially for a team that's trying to find. They haven't really found their footing. They haven't got the ball rolling. You feel like they're on the precipice, but it's that execution. Guys like Jacob Mitchelson have been so close. I think him and Goodmanson must have hit 4 or 5 posts the other night. So they're close, and you can't say, as fate would have it, if things would have happened a different way, would they have had a different outcome? Perhaps, but credit to the Steelers for playing a full 60-minute hockey game.
Yeah, and I mean, a special teams effort, as Hudson Friesen alludes to a little bit later on as well. Selkirk goes 1 for 10, Winkler goes 0 for 7. And those are big opportunities that both clubs really didn't take advantage of. And at what point, Kevin, do we stop saying it's early? I mean, we're how many games in now? We're 10 into the season. Is it time to start thinking, if you're Winkler, you got to start finding ways to put points in the bank. And there's an opportunity to pick up 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 points that just kind of passed them by.
Well, you can ask Hudson Friesen about it. Look at what happened to Selkirk last year. They were ahead real early, and the scope of things changed. It was a slow, it's like a tree slowly falling in the woods. It just happened, and you kind of didn't believe it, but then all of a sudden you get to playoffs, and they find themselves on the outside looking in. The Flyers need to find a way to get points, and when you're given opportunities like a power play, you have to start playing that hammer and nail type of mentality. You can't pass it around the perimeter because Ethan Sawyer played phenomenally in net. He made super key saves during those power plays, and those are must scores because if you don't create a 1 or 2 goal cushion when you inevitably have your let down or that little bit of a lull in the game, which tends to happen. Very difficult to play a 60-minute full bore hockey game, of course, but you need to capitalize when given your opportunities. And so far, the Flyers haven't found that. You see, there are rays of hope there. It's just they need to find a way to cash.
Yeah, we should point out that Winkler outshot Selkirk in both those games. And like you said, Ethan Sawyer played very well. I saw him when he played Steinbach the game prior, and really fantastic goaltender. But yeah, there are things that Winkler can build on. A couple of new pieces, some big bodies on defense, and then of course, finding that offensive flair. And it's all led by Cam Thomas, the local captain. The last game we want to focus in on actually took place on Wednesday, Steinbach and Portage. Things got wild in that third period, but around that, Steinbach scores 7 unanswered goals, makes a bit of a statement, and that's a big boost again for a Steinbach team that's gotten better here going over the past couple of weeks. That's a big step in the right direction.
Well, it's unsurprising that Steinbach finds themselves in a successful situation here. Sitting at 9-1, I believe their record is currently. They've got a lot of great pieces. I just watched the way they move the puck. There was a goal scored later in the game. I think Brody Green passed it out front, almost a no-look job, and caught the goaltender surprised. It's just how skilled they are with the puck, how they seem to never cease to find that little gap. They're also very capable of playing physical hockey. Their defensemen move the puck so well, which gives them a little bit of a breathing room heading up the ice. They just execute at the right time. They bear down, and their special teams have been spectacular.
And points from the defense has also been a big thing. As of yesterday, they're over 40 some odd points as a collective defense, and that makes things really difficult. And it frustrated the Terriers to an extent where they ended up loading up in penalty minutes. And we saw it happen the weekend against the Northern Manitoba Blizzard. They had a massive penalty-filled game, and it happened again this time at Stride Place. And you got to wonder a little bit, just is this a bonding experience for a team, or is this an opportunity to maybe look at yourself in the mirror and ask, are we going to be mature enough to get through the stretches when it's not going our way?
Well, that's always the internal battle you have to have, and having the mental fortitude to see things through, and the experience I think is key there as well. Guys that have been through this before. Of course, it's frustrating, but when you have an embarrassment of riches like Paul Dick and company have with the Steinbach Pistons, some nights they are going to capitalize, and you're going to be on the bottom looking up. So you have to find a way to take those measurable things that you can learn, move forward with. And in some case, let's be frank, frustration overrules that, and you maybe do things where other times cooler heads would prevail, and it would prevail. But in this case, there was a ton of penalty minutes in that game, and if you want to check something interesting, tune in at about the 11-20 minute mark of the third period, and you'll be entertained.
Yeah, Cody Bueller, I texted him after the game yesterday. I thought he did a great job on the call. He was very mature, very poignant, very detailed. Battled the issues with Flow Hockey throughout that broadcast, and he stuck with it. And really good call. And positives that Porters can take. Ryan Bellin is unreal, and watching Owen Witt play hockey is an absolute joy, man. That kid is unreal, and he's just gotten better and better. And the way he skates is fantastic. So it's going to be interesting to see where Portage goes from here. I mean, you look at the MJHL East standings, Kevin. You got Selkirk on the top, 20 points. Steinbach, game in hand, 19 points. Niverville, couple of games in hand on everybody at 14 points. Portage, 9 games played, 13 points. And you got Winnipeg at 8, Flyers at 5, Monarchs at the bottom at 2. MGE East Division, it's going to be a tight race, with that top four. Do you see Winnipeg or Winkler kind of making a bit of a statement here going forward and trying to push their way into the top four? Or do you think we're starting to see the top four kind of separate a bit here?
They're starting to settle, and I'm not going to go back to the early thing, because like you said, things are starting to form. We're starting to see patterns already, even though it is relatively soon to start making finite decisions on things. But I definitely think that there's going to be a change in the scope if Selkirk can learn from their past experiences. I don't see them falling before below the top four. Winkler, you'd have to assume, judging from past history and seeing how things are starting to develop there, that they're going to start knocking on the door. But it is intriguing to see that the Blues have found a way to win, and they're starting to. Why wouldn't they win on any given night? That's the key to that mentality: is walking into a building and not thinking, well, up until now we haven't really been competitive. Why can't we be? Why can't we go in anywhere and walk away with 2 points? And that's going to separate, those teams that don't make it. If they can find a way to scrap for those points, is going to be key.
Then you look at the MGEU West Division, Dauphin having played the second fewest games in the entire league at just 7. They're 6-1, 12 points. Verdun in second, 9 games played, 12 points. Wayway Sikapo, 10 games played, 10 points. Neepawa, 9 games, 6 points. Swan Valley, 10 games, 4 points. And the Blizzards still in search of their first win of the season. They do have an overtime loss, so 1 point there. Really, it looks like those. And even the Blizzard, you can't really count out now if they can find a way to kind of scrape a couple of points in divisional matchups. But Swan Valley's right there. Neepawa's not comfortable. Wayway's not comfortable. Verdun probably isn't comfortable. Dauphin, I don't think, is thinking they're running away with it. This MGEU West is really, really tight, and it doesn't look like it's going to separate anytime soon.
I love the parity. Any given night when a team can go in and all out battle for those for that victory, it's so key. And one would think that the Dauphin Kings, combined with their goaltending and the amount of talent they have, those other teams are going to have to work real hard to keep pace. And you can't let any point slip through your fingers at this stage of the game. You have to go in and find a way. And consistency ultimately is the hardest thing to attain, especially with the amount of skill other teams have on their rosters at this point. The league is looking really cool, and I'm sitting here as a fan just enjoying how close things are and how tough it's going to be for some teams to fight for a playoff spot.
Yeah, and I know that we're sitting here, mid-October, so talking about the playoffs is probably not fair, we'll say, because things can change so drastically. But one thing that's not going to change is the playoff format. And you look at the top 4 teams in the West, the top 4 teams in the East. We kind of saw it last year. In the East, you're going to knock out 2 teams in the first round that could end up being, contenders for the championship. Not taking anything away from the West. I know it goes back and forth. Next year could just as easily be the West in this situation. To me, the playoff format, it's weeding out a couple of good teams. Yes, it's giving other teams an opportunity, but if you look at the West Division this year, those 2 bottom teams might be pretty far away from the top two teams, and the East Division might have a better record than the second best team in the West. And all of a sudden, a couple of teams are getting through, others are getting knocked out. To me, I think it's time that we have to seriously consider changing the playoff format.
Yeah, it's kind of like this scenario where right now there's a great deal of opportunity for chaos, and if you're one of those top teams, it puts that pressure on you. If all of a sudden you have, like for example, last year the Niverville Nighthawks playing the Steinbach Pistons. If you want to move on and win the championship, ultimately you're going to have to run through the best team. If the standings dictate that the heavyweights and points, let's say for argument's sake, are in the East, it's going to create a pressure cooker, which I think is probably your best test. You want your toughest test all the time. So then when you're presented with it, ultimately come playoff time or semifinals or finals, you're prepared for it. But it also gives those other teams an opportunity. Chaos could happen elsewhere. I can benefit. Let's see how it shakes out.
Sure, but if you're a team in the regular season, and you have a good regular season, you deserve a reward in maybe getting a playoff opponent that is not as close to you as we've seen when you have it in division. I mean, Selkirk, Portage, Steinbach, Niverville would be the first round if the playoffs started today. And again, I know it's October 16th, but then you're looking Dauphin, Neepawa, Verdun, Wayway, Sakapo. With all due respect, that East division is a lot harder to come out of. I don't think you're picking a clear-cut winner out of that East. It may be a little bit easier in the West. And Selkirk, Steinbach, Niverville, Portage, they if they do have the best overall records coming at the end of the year, and again, it's going to be a lot harder to do. They deserve, in my opinion, some sort of reward, and that's playing a team that's maybe not as a good a season, not as close to them in the same division. Just my opinion that there needs to be a little bit more of a regular season reward for teams that do well, regardless of what division you're in.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I'm thankful it's above my pay grade to make those decisions. I'm just thankful to sit here and enjoy the entertainment of it all. And you can say the same for leagues above, like the NHL, the way they have structured things structured now. Some want it to go back to the old way of doing things, take the rankings from top to bottom and not based on divisional play. But there's always going to be some sort of caveat. In an ideal world, things could always be better. I just think in this case it's spreading the opportunity around a little bit. And is it always ideal? Probably not for the teams that want the ribbon for what they deserve, but in this case they're going to have to fight for what they want, and that's ultimately the Turnbull Cup.
Yeah, and if you're, on the league side of things, because like you said, it's easy for us to stand and kind of point fingers. If you're on the league side of things, you have five different champions the last number of years. You're the sixth place team won it all last year because they had fantastic goaltending, great coaching, and timely scoring, and one of the best game sevens in Manitoba Junior Hockey League history. I mean, that's a moment that's going to live in infamy, and it all is because of the way that the playoffs are structured. And maybe you don't get that otherwise. But so there's really no way to thread the needle. It's just you're either trying to do you want to make it a fair league for everybody, or do you want to reward teams that have success? I lean towards if a team is going to battle throughout a regular season, go through injuries, the travel, all of that, and they come out as one of the better teams, one of the top four teams overall, they deserve some sort of carrot for that. But I get it on both sides, right?
It's a unique environment too, because in a lot of cases with these teams, if everybody has that belief, we've been talking about this entire program here, if everybody has the belief that they can go into a series and win, no matter where they finished, because hey, we're competitive, we're here for a reason. Why can we not throw the standings out the window? We're here to try and win the same game the other guys are, but it creates that parity and that feeling of equality, which creates the best competition, in my opinion, on any given night. You don't know. And from a fan standpoint, that might be frustrating at times, but we're here for the entertainment and to see these guys perform at the highest level they can.
Yeah, I know. I'll speak for you and the other broadcasters that we talk to. When playoffs do roll around, we pay real attention to the other series, and we're always kind of watching who's beating who. Because, like you said, you never really know when it gets to that time of year. But we're months away from that, and there's a lot to get to before that. Things are going to change, I'm sure. Continuing on here on the Manitoba Junior Hockey League show, Kevin, let's talk about the three stars announced by the Manitoba Junior Hockey League this week, starting with a guy guy that we've talked about before, you get to see on a regular basis, Nick Goodmanson. 2 games, 7 points, fantastic run again for the heart and soul of the Flyers. He earns a star. Tell us about him.
Electric player, great skater, super quick release. Just I'm lucky to be able to watch Nick play on a regular basis. You know, he's so important to that Flyers offense. You see how the puck moves through him. He also distributes it very well. So, you know, as much as they're trying to get a shot from him, he has an absolute cannon waiting for that one-timer on the far side of the power play, to just how he rushes the puck up ice with his head up, looking for those little plays, and everybody feeds off of it. Just an exciting player to watch, good young man to boot. Just an extremely special talent we have here in the league.
Speaking of special talent, he was a Winkler Flyer at one point. He moved over to Dauphin, had a bit of a rough transition, but he's slowly finding his way. Bryson Yashishin, I'll give you $5 if you can spell it without looking, Kevin. 2 wins, really good goals against, and just one even, a save percentage of .957, and stopped 45 of 47, including a 28 save performance against the Nighthawks. There's a young man that's gaining confidence out of opportunity, because Dolphins crease, I don't think, was settled going into the year. He's really taken the ball and run with it here of late.
Well, hey, don't forget we're talking about a fellow Mordnite here. I'm familiar with the Ishishins, so
So you could spell it. Okay, okay, good to know.
I probably could. I know his dad a little bit. He was a Winkler Flyer too. Um, Athletic goaltender. He's got a super strong mentality when it comes to preparation and the craft. He is a goaltender that focuses on all of the nuance that comes along with just trying to stop the puck. And, he'll fight for those extra saves too. Sometimes he'll make the save he shouldn't, but he's also very technical and makes the saves he should. He's very well of his angles. Just a fine young goaltender, and it's like they also have Justin Perreault and Dauphin too, so
Mhm.
they are going to have to fight for that spot. But I love the maturity that Bryson has shown throughout the course of this year. He's earned the opportunity to try and prove his value out there, and it's just nice to see him get rewarded with success.
And the third star goes to Bryce Bryant of the Verdant Oil Capitals. Came back, he's had an immediate impact, fits right into Tyson Ramsey's system, fits into the locker room, and he's just got that every time he touches the puck, you believe something special can happen kind of aura. And 5 points in 3 games, but again, it's a lot of the little things he does, and he just brings another level of swagger to an Oil Capitals club, Kevin, like we've talked about, is spinning their wheels a little bit, but every time they play, you think they can win.
Well, and he's a big part of that. Just watching him operate is admirable. Strong on the puck, does things away from the puck that contribute to things happening successfully for the Verdun Oil Capitals. Plays a physical game. They're leaning on him in multiple different opportunities or circumstances throughout a hockey game. And how important is that to have a Swiss Army knife type of guy that you can call on and execute at times of the game that are important, to try and grab that win. So just a great young hockey player, fun to watch. I can't say enough about how they operate in Verdun, and they seem to find these guys continually. And seeing Bryce with success is just a fun thing to see from my standpoint.
Those are your Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries 3 stars for week 4 in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. I'm Dave Anthony. Kevin Paul's joining us. We're going to have a quick break here coming up. We're going to be joined by Hudson Friesen of the Selkirk Steelers. We're going to talk a little bit about the Steelers' hot start. And then on the other side, Kevin, we're going to start breaking down Friday's matchups. I'm going to give you my pundits picks right here on the MJHL show, and you can tell me why I'm a genius or why I'm the exact opposite, at least maybe in some instances.
That's
So we'll be
asking a
back
lot.
after a break. Here's Hudson Friesen. All right, very excited to have on the Manitoba Junior Hockey League show this week, coach of the Selkirk Steelers, Mr. Hudson Friesen. Huddy, thanks for doing this today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Well, for starters, another strong start to the year. Just take us through what you've liked about your team and how they've gotten off to such a hot start.
Yeah, obviously it's been great to get off to another hot start this year. And, obviously last year we went through it and, saw kind of what happens when you aren't consistent and when things fall off. So I think this year with our group, having a good, strong group of returning guys and a good foundation to build on from last year. Our group's matured. We're a year older, and we've seen how important it is to have that strong start. And I think we've done a lot of the same things we did to start last year, but I feel like this year it's just been a little bit different with how we're winning and how we're playing, and playing a bit more of a sustainable style. And for our group, we know that the offense is going to be there with the guys that we have, but trusting our defensive structure and our play without the puck has been at the forefront for our group. And I think our guys have done a really good job just buying into that mindset and coming to work every day and getting better. I think at times last year maybe some complacency would sneak into our guys and into our group, and that's something this year. I just see the hunger in our guys every day and our willingness to improve and get better, and that's something that we're obviously got to continue to do here as we continue to go forward.
You would understand that there's probably some skepticism around the league that this would be sustainable considering what you did last year. But you're right, it feels different. How much did your returning guys learn from last year's kind of peak and then the valleys and then the ebbs and flows? How much did they learn and how much have they taken into the start of this year?
Yeah, I think we learned a lot of hard lessons last year. Having that great start and everything was going right for us, and then to have things kind of turn around and go the other way. It's there was some big learning lessons, and I think our returning guys and our leadership group has understood that it's not easy. Things are going to get harder as the season goes on, and we can't just rely on being a run and gun team. Like, the defensive side of things are so important in this league, and continuously getting better, improving as a group. Like, teams get better as the year goes on, and you can't be just complacent with where we're at. And, I think they came into camp, ready to win, and our desire to win games and be a playoff team this year. We could see it from every guy every day, and that burning desire is there. And that's something we're going to have to continue to build on here as we go forward.
How do you talk about consistency in watching that Winkler Flyers game the other day? You guys just never quit and you played right till the last buzzer. I don't think the Flyers did the same, but you guys carried through. You were very good on special teams. And one thing I've really been impressed with has been the play of Ethan Sawyer. He's made key saves down the stretch, and I've been up close watching him, and it's just fantastic how good athletic he is. Just speak to how important that is to your game right now, too.
Oh, it's Ethan's been just phenomenal. He had a really strong rookie season last year, and coming into this year, being a year older, being 19, we knew he was going to take that step and be the guy for us. And he's just been the backbone for us right from the start of the year. And when there are breakdowns, especially that game Sunday in Winkler, when we weren't really at our best for stretches of that game, he really just kept us in it and kept things calm. He's very composed. He's very poised. There's never any panic in his game, and like you said there, Palsy, like, he's very athletic. He reads the play well. He's a very cerebral hockey player and hockey mind as well. And he's able to read the play very well also. So, he's been great, in the room as well. He's just a very calm presence and gives our group confidence. And if there is a slip in our D zone coverage or in our transition game against, he's been there to shut the door. And, getting those points in Winkler were huge. And he was obviously leading the way for us.
And we'll touch more on that Winkler back to back there in just a little bit, Huddy. Sometimes we can try and go a little bit too deep when trying to analyze why a team is being successful. So let's just start right at the top. Your big guns have been just that. Wavar has been unreal. Whittam's been unreal. Griffin Crone, Landon Q as an 07 has chipped in. Just what's it like throwing those guys over the boards every night and watching them go to work?
Oh, it's been special. They're a very talented group. I mean, the scoring, it's come in bunches for these guys, and whether it's power play or 5-on-5, they're finding ways to contribute on a nightly basis. And it's no surprise with how hard these guys work and practice and the work they put in over the summer. And these guys love each other as well. Like, they love competing against each other in practice and coming to work every day and improving. And just to see the offense accelerate, and for guys like Witham and Guevara coming in as second year guys in our program and taking that step has been really special to watch. And you can just see their confidence continue to grow on a daily basis, and the chemistry within some of our lines is growing as well. So it's a pleasure to watch, and some of the goals and some of the plays those guys are able to make with the skill level they have is pretty special.
Success certainly breeds a fun environment, Huddy. And just watching from the outside, I was really impressed with how your group operated. It seems they're very tight, very relaxed. And also, too, you speak to your big guns, but I also saw there's a lot of young talent there, too, that gives you a great deal of depth. That's obviously something a little different than last year. You feel a little more confident with what you can spread out on the ice.
Yeah, definitely. I think our depth this year is, we definitely have a little bit more of it. And, some of the young guys that have come in, Isaac Sousa, being an '09 and coming in and doing what he's done to start the year has been, phenomenal to watch. On the back end, Madden Samard's a player that's taken, a huge step as a rookie defenseman and playing big minutes for us as well. And yeah, if the top guns aren't going, we have that depth, especially in our bottom six this year where, especially I felt like those games in Winkler, they really stepped up. And even if they aren't producing, they're having a positive impact on the game and being responsible defensively and earning our trust in those areas. And, whether it's on the power play or the penalty kill, everybody's chipping in and everybody's, having a part of it right now and pulling on the rope together. And, it's been good to see everything starting to come together. And obviously there's a lot of work to be done yet. And, we're not satisfied. And that's something we're going to continue to, build on here as we go.
Heidi, we touched on it last year, right around this time after you got off to a hot start. We talked about you guys being hunted, and we talked about, what it's like to know you're going to get every team's best, and you're really getting it this year. I mean, everybody's talking about your hot start, and everybody wants to be that team that kind of knocks you down a little bit. Uh, Even you as a coach, how much did you learn from last year about the approach that you take to managing the excitement level, managing the expectations? How much have you grown as a coach from last year into this year?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot as a coach, and I feel like I've grown a lot in a few areas. But just I think the big thing is just not letting the success get to our heads, and think that it's just going to be easy. And on a nightly basis, anybody in our league can beat anybody. The parity is very high, and you got to come ready to play, and you got to do the right things to win. So I think just keeping our group level headed has been important, and taking it just day by day and one game at a time, and not looking too far in the future, not looking too far at who we got down the road, and just focusing on the task at hand. And and that starts in practice too, just getting better every day. And even if it's just that 1%, just improving and grinding. And and not listening to the the white noise outside as well. I think last year some of that maybe went to our heads, or maybe as we struggled, that took away some of our confidence. And we know that people are going to hate on us and say things, and we're not afraid of that, and we're not worried about that at all. We're just here to, continue to get better and, stick together as a group. And these guys have done a great job just, staying level headed and staying committed to, what's in front of us.
Those two big wins in Winkler. I know that those are games you kind of maybe circle a little bit as being statement opportunities. So not only do you pull out a couple of wins, you do it in a couple of different ways. Take us through what it was like to watch your group kind of handle their business and prove that they can win, depending on whatever the opponent kind of throws at them too.
Yeah, I think it was really good growth for our team. Winkler's a heavy team. They're really strong defensively. They have tight gaps. There's not much room. They're a very good team. Despite their record, they're a very strong team, and they're a team that's going to be a handful here as the year goes. So for us to go in there and the first game, I didn't think we played our best. I thought we were a little bit overwhelmed by the pace and the physicality of the game, and it took a while for us to settle in. And obviously Sawyer was phenomenal that night to kind of hold the fort down while we found our game. And finally, in the third period, I felt like we were starting to play and find a way to win. And it wasn't the prettiest win, but I think after that game, Monday practice, we went over some stuff. We went over some stuff in video and corrected a few things and just talked about the game. And I thought the guys did a great job implementing the game plan on Tuesday. And Tuesday, I thought we looked like a much different team. I thought we looked much more confident. We were able to play with a little bit more pace. We were able to open it up a little bit more. The power play, obviously, we had a lot of opportunities there with the way the game went. And the penalty kill, I thought, in a lot of ways, won us the game with obviously, going 100% on the kill and getting that shorty late to tie it up was huge. So, just for the guys to see that, okay, we don't have to score 6 or 7 goals to win. We don't have to outscore our opponent. We can grind games down and play in different styles and play playoff hockey in in October. So I think it was really good growth for the guys, and they learned a lot, and it's definitely stuff that we can put in our back pocket as we move forward.
Going against teams like Winkler, you said they play a heavy game, and obviously we know the importance of, like you said, beating these good teams. It kind of keeps the momentum going. Talk about in game. Like, do you have to do a great deal of management with your guys, or do you find they're really buying into the program and there isn't as much guidance necessary this time around? Because I know those games can be emotional. There's times during the game where the Wink Flyers like to mix it up a little bit. Do you have to actively reinforce that, or is that well known throughout the group?
Yeah, I think Sunday, the first game up there was a little bit of that where we are just kind of figuring it out, and it was our first time kind of dealing with that this year. So there was a little bit of management done there, but I think as a group and our leadership group, obviously they've been here before. We played Winkler a lot last year. They know what they're all about and how they want to play. So I thought our older guys and our veteran guys, our leadership group, did a really good job, just kind of settling the guys down and just making sure that the message was consistent and making sure that nobody was backing down. And it's we have to change the way we played and play a different style. And as much as as a staff we implemented stuff, I thought the group and the leadership group did a great job just carrying that forward and making sure that everybody was on the same page and everybody was bought into doing what we had to do to get those 2 points.
Looking back a little bit before we look forward, Huddy, those two games against Winkler, you got the Steinbach game at home, and then you had those two games prior to that up in the Paw. Just how much does this little pocket kind of bonded your guys together, whether it be emotional games like the Winkler Steinbach games or a long road trip like going up to the Paw and finding ways to win there? How much has this team kind of gelled specifically over the last 10 days?
Oh, I think we've definitely come together a ton over the last 10 days. Obviously going up north, it's a long bus ride. You spend a lot of time together. Going up there is never easy, and playing in that environment, especially with their home opener and raising the banners. So, I thought it was a great experience for us to go into a different environment and find a way to get 4 points up there. And obviously spending all that time together is very important for the guys. And I thought they definitely bonded that weekend, and carrying that forward into last week. We had a few things in our community going on where the guys were together on a lot of evenings, and then having those three big divisional games, and just playing at the intensity that those games demanded. And I thought, yeah, 100%. The group really came together a ton here over the last 10 days, and you could see it with the way that they're sacrificing for each other, just how happy guys are for other guys' success, whether it's in game or after game, just guys celebrating other individuals' success. And it's been great to see. And it definitely, if you love one another, you're definitely willing to go to battle for each other and sacrifice and do whatever it takes. And we could definitely see that area of our game growing in our dressing room. And it's exciting to see for sure.
Huddy, we'll wrap up with this. Just kind of looking ahead over the next few games. You're in Niverville, tough place to play coming up this weekend. You got a couple of home games against a Blues team that's riding hot and a Wayway Sikapo team that is still kind of finding their consistency, but they work really hard. They got incredible speed. So you're getting three different kinds of matchups here in your next three games. Just take us through how you go about, planning for another team while sticking to what makes your team successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Starting with Niverville this Saturday, it's a huge divisional game. It's a game that all the guys are going to be up for. I know the guys are excited to, go to Niverville and, play a division rival. And that's something we outlined with this stretch of our schedule, just how important these divisional games are and the 4 point swing, especially with how tight, the division is. So, that'll be our focus here today and tomorrow with practice, is just getting ready for Niverville, but focusing on what we do well. We'll go over stuff from the Winkler games and, see some things that we can implement going forward, some things that we can learn from, and then get ready for Niverville. And we won't look too far ahead in our schedule. We'll take care of that game first, and then we'll move forward to, the Blues and obviously the Wayway and I believe Dolphins after that. So it's an exciting stretch in our schedule, and we'll just be taking things a day at a time here and focusing on getting better. And like I said earlier, just not staying stagnant, just finding ways to continue to improve on a daily basis. And that'll be the game plan here for the next couple of days.
Hudson Friesen, we appreciate you being generous with your time here today, and always look forward to catching up again down the road. Thanks so much for doing this, Huddy.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks so much for having me on.
To Hudson Friesen for taking time to chat with us. I know it's a busy guy, but really great insight. And Kevin, one of the things we didn't get to talk about with Hudson Friesen was just the influx of guys coming back to Selkirk and there being a program there that they want to come back to and that they can excel in. And we're seeing that around the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. More guys are coming back because they know how good of quality this hockey is and how good of quality the organizations are. That says a lot for this league.
100%. It's nice to see because last year things could have gone sideways for them based on their fall from grace, so to speak. It's nice to see good guys returning to their club and providing that talent that they're leaning on right now and having a great deal of success from it.
Absolutely. And again, really good couple of quality wins. There's been some great wins throughout the week. There's been some upsets throughout the week. And that's why when we do pundits pick'ems on Friday, we always have a lot of fun. Defending champion over here, first year defending champion over there. I mean, we'll see how we do this year. We're in tough against Cody Bueller. I think he's leading. He's running away with it right now. He's been very, very solid. But Kevin, what we're gonna do is with the three games coming up this Friday, I'm gonna give you my pundits picks, and
Yeah.
then we can discuss one of the three matchups because the Steinbach Winnipeg game that was supposed to go Friday has been postponed. Circumstances beyond team's control, so that's been pushed. So just the three games. We got Wayway versus the Northern Manitoba Blizzard. The Blizzard's still in search of their first win. They've always made it tough at the Roy H. Johnson. Look at what they did with Selkirk. They limited shots. They made Selkirk really dig deep to find a pair of wins. The Portage games got out of hand a little bit, but there's something there. They're building towards something. Sakapo, though, with Roulette, and I really like that Sebastian Hicks. They've got something cooking there. They work hard, and I'm going to take the Sakapo Wolverines over the Northern Manitoba Blizzard for Friday nights. Agree, disagree? What are your thoughts?
I would agree. The Blizzard are still trying to find their footing. They've had a few issues trying to play a whole game and stay on the right side of the puck. And I'm sure there's things that the coaches are working on there to find that. They're getting the personnel to help. But we're talking about a Wayway Capo team that is extremely tough on the puck. It's not an easy building to go in, like you mentioned. But the Wolverines have something there, and they've got some strong contributors to that as well. So I'm going to find it very difficult for Wayway to come out of there without a win.
Swan Valley versus the Winnipeg Monarchs, the Stampeders. Again, I've seen them recently, so maybe it's a little bit of recency bias, but they've got some pieces. I like that Ben Groomy moves around really well. Bartha on the blue line, fantastic. Their goaltending strong, despite what the numbers maybe say. And the Monarchs, they struggle to score. We know that they're 1-12 on the year. They're finding it hard to get offense. So I take the Swan Valley Stampeders at home. Again, a building that they play very well in. And then, Kevin, the big game that I want to talk to you about is the Verdant Oil Capitals at Tundra Oil and Gas Place against your Winkler Flyers. And we're old enough now, we've been around enough to remember the year the Flyers won, the mentality change that came from that Verdant playoff series. And the way that they kind of flipped the switch to playing a different style that led them to a Turnbull Cup. Could this be a moment where the Flyers have something similar, where something sparks and they can kind of go on a run? Because they did it last year in Verdun. Are they capable of doing it maybe early this year in Verdun?
Well, if Friday night isn't a catalyst to that, I would say Tuesday night would be a low point that they would reflect on and say that they need to be better. I would expect they come out hard and fast on Friday. It's about staying disciplined, of course, trying to stay out of the penalty box and executing on the power play. Verdun's a pretty responsible and disciplined team, so you may not get those opportunities. So you're going to have to play 5-on-5 hockey. They're going to need good goaltending from Leif Ekblad, and they're going to need a whole team effort because Verdun will bring the same. I would expect this game on Friday. To me, it's a pivotal point for the Winkler Flyers. They need to find some success and they need to gain some confidence. And this is, a very tough team to beat. But if they can find a way, it would go a long way.
Yeah, you talk about Verdun being very disciplined. They're right in the middle of the pack of times shorthanded, and that's a stat I always find very fascinating. League leaders are the Winnipeg Monarchs, believe it or not. The Verdun Oil Capitals 42 times shorthanded, the Flyers 56. When you look at power play opportunities, though, the Flyers have earned 47 power plays. Meanwhile, Verdun just 38. So special teams may play a big factor in there. We talked about how dangerous the Verdun Oil Capitals can be. And, we haven't even talked about their goaltending. Braxton Berdenny's gone in there and played very, very well. This Verdun Oil Capitals team, once again, Kevin, maybe I'm speaking it into my, like, I'm thinking about it so much that they're due for this magical big run and it's going to start Friday night against the Flyers. It's probably not that far fetched, but it's a team that's still kind of struggling a little bit.
It's just finding that consistency. I think they're making little improvements as they go. Like you said, they have solid goaltending. They've got pieces throughout that lineup that can hurt you during a hockey game. They just need to find a way to do it night by night and start believing in that and just because there's always going to be a tough matchup. You have a team coming in on Friday that's still looking for their swagger, and that's the Winkler Flyers. So it's going to be very interesting for me to see. I think the Flyers play a very difficult game to play against. They're physical and they're tough. You need to keep a cool head and not retaliate after the whistle. So to me, that'll be a big key to that hockey game.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going back and forth on this, and I really am upset at myself for painting myself into this corner where I got to say which team I want to pick. 'Cause I wish I could spend the rest of the day thinking about it. My gut's telling me Winkler, but my head's telling me Verdun, and I'm gonna stick with my head on this one. I'm gonna go Verdun Oil Capitals, but I think it's gonna be close because, like you said, Winkler has a lot to prove heading into that game. Matt Mello's gonna have his guys jacked up, and I wouldn't be surprised Goodmanson, Mitchelson, they end up combining for something really special. But I'm gonna take the Verdun Oil Capitals at home. Tough building to play in. And if they got Digger the mascot out there, and I'm going to take Digger over that Gritty any day of the week.
Hey, Gritty's my buddy,
Kevin,
man. Take it easy.
well, yeah, I mean, your stepbrothers practically, right?
Well, I have a feeling if I don't take the Flyers on Friday for my pundits picks, there might be some pitchforks coming out down the road.
But again, it's not an outrageous pick. I mean, like, could I see it going to overtime? Absolutely. I mean, Verdun, they've stumbled at times. They've shown that they can struggle to score goals at times. I mean, they scored 6 against Nipawa. They've scored 3 against Wayway. Before that, it was 7 against Wayway, 7 against Swan. So, but they've given up some goals too. And Winkler can score, and they're going to come with a chip on their shoulder. And I wouldn't expect anything other than a sterling performance from Leif Ekblad, who I think wants to quiet some critics as well. It's not his fault that things haven't necessarily gone his way, but I think he wants to make some big saves, and I think Friday night's a perfect opportunity to do it.
Well, momentum's such a huge thing, and when you find yourself, on the bottom end of stuff like the Flyers did against the Steelers the other day, it's awfully hard sometimes to see the positives moving forward, but there were some measurable differences they made. The trick is going to be, finding that, reaching deep and finding a way to make a difference, making that extra save. And Leif Ekblad has played very good goaltending for the Flyers. He hasn't been, rewarded so far with that play because I think there's opportunities they left on the table scoring wise in front of them. But I think going into Friday's game, everybody just needs to keep a cool head, play a 60-minute game with team defense. And I don't think there's any reason why the Flyers can't think they can beat anybody.
Couple of things before we close out episode 2 of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League show. Make sure you check out MJHLhockey.ca. The Bungie Power Rankings are up. There was some movement this week. We've got Plays of the Week presented by Esdale as well, so you want to check that out. And this is going to be my weekly plea to change the intro of that. I think it's time, Kevin. I like your voice, but I think it's time to change the intro for Plays of the Week. Just want to throw that out there. And a little bit of news that came out early in October. The Centennial Cup is heading east. Summerside PEI, really exciting opportunity for them to host again. I know that the East Coast, I hear it's beautiful in April, so if we get to go, that'd be great. This is a lot of fun though, and for such a prestigious tournament where 10 teams get to go, this is massive. Not anybody can just host this. It takes a lot of work behind the scenes, and great on Summerside for stepping up and getting this done. That's awesome. Just your thoughts on that tournament that's already circled May 7th to 17th in Summerside PEI.
Well, cool location, man. It would ever be cool to go to something like that. But ultimately, it's great for the players. What an opportunity to show off your skill on a bigger stage against all of the other best players from regions throughout Canada. I just think it's a special opportunity, and it's good for those young men to go out and be able to have the biggest stage with the most eyes on them to put their best foot forward. So really cool. Glad all the leagues are joining in on that. It's going to be fun to watch.
Speaking of special events, before we get to our volunteer shout out for this week, the MJSJ announced a Western All-Star Challenge at the end of September. The announcement came out. It's going to be coming up November 3rd through 5th. It's my understanding that things are moving behind the scenes. We're getting closer to some staff announcements. We're going to get even closer to a roster announcement. But again, that's kind of fluid with players kind of going in and out of their own respective lineups. This is a really cool opportunity from the MJ and the SJ to come together to form this challenge, which will take place in Martinsville, Saskatchewan. Kevin, just your thoughts on this, being a World Junior A Challenge kind of event with Hockey Canada involved, and what this means to some young players that are going to get an opportunity to kind of shine over a few days.
Any chance you get to be selected to one of those teams is special for anybody. And it's like we said earlier, it's nice to be rewarded and picked out of a crowd and then put in an opportunity in front of a wider group of folks that maybe wouldn't have to see you play otherwise. It's just really cool, and I love the showcases. I love the any opportunity where we as outsiders get to see maybe what's happening elsewhere that we don't get to see on a regular basis.
Yeah, and again, we were talking about Owen Witt earlier, talking about like Nick Goodmanson, talking about guys like that. When they get to showcase their skills, when it's the kind of the best on best scenarios, there's nothing quite like it. And this is an excellent opportunity for both Manitoba Junior Hockey League players and coaches, because this is a big deal for the coaches too and the staff. We want to shout out guys like Jason Hart. We want to shout out Dana Warner out of Verdon. They volunteer their time. They go and they do this, and it's not an easy thing to do. And they do it, and they do such a good job. So from the players to the staff to the coaches, it's going to be an excellent opportunity, and cannot wait to see some of the videos coming out from that event. And again, as we may end up doing kind of a coach reveal special down the road when we get told who the coaches are going to be. And I don't think they're going to let us announce the rosters necessarily, Kevin, but we maybe will be able to talk to one of the players that gets selected as well coming up. As we get ready to wrap up week 2 of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League show, Kevin Pauls, last week we started the tradition, which we will do each and every time we have an episode. We wanted to give a shout out to the volunteers, because without volunteers around the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, teams would not be able to run as good as they do. And teams always love and appreciate their volunteers. So we did one last week. We're going to turn it over to you. Your volunteer shout out from Winkler this week.
Our volunteer this week is Scott Ryman from Winkler. And it's super cool. These volunteers are fans too. And Scott does a great job for the Flyers. He hosts the visiting teams, any of the away teams coming into the building. He sorts them out, make sure they have what they need, which as a diehard Winkler fan can't be easy because you're trying to take care of the other guys. And he does such a good job. He's selfless about it, works hard to make sure that they're comfortable and ready to go, and they can perform their best on the ice. So hats off to Scott Ryman and the work he does as a volunteer for the Winkler Flyers.
Well, my dog is barking, so that must mean it's time to go. Kevin Pauls, thanks so much for doing this. Week 2 of the MJHL show wrapping up. We'll see you again in a couple weeks.